Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this channel. My name is Zubair Charles, and I am an English home language teacher. I've been teaching for the past 5 years. I've also just recently had experience of marking the Paper 2 English home language exam, specifically the poetry section. And in this video, we'll be dealing with poetry, so hopefully I can use some of the things that I've learned at the marking center to help you understand this poem a little bit better. Nonetheless, the goal of this video, I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel. Many of my former students will know this, as I want to share some of the skills that I've learned as well as the methodologies with regards to approaching teaching with grade 12 learners as well as other teachers in South Africa. So hopefully the way I approach teaching poetry will help you understand the poem better. As I've also explained in this previous video, I'm presently completing my master's degree in creative writing, and with that, I hope you will check out some of my work, specifically my non-fiction essays. The links will be in the comment section below, and check out some of my own poetry as well, and hopefully at the end of the year, I'll be done with my first novel, so I hope you guys will check that out. So, I'll be beginning the lesson with introductory questions, also known as probing questions. For the teachers that are watching, you should know that every lesson or every introduction of the lesson is where we as teachers test learners' prior knowledge. So learners have prior knowledge, also known as everyday knowledge, meaning that we don't assume that learners step into our classrooms knowing nothing. Excuse me. So we test learners' knowledge, right? So everyday learners are learning various things in their communities on their way to schools, from their parents, etc. And we have to match that knowledge with the content knowledge of the lesson. So the first question that I'm going to ask everybody watching is, what do you associate with weddings? Now, unfortunately, we're not in a formal or traditional classroom where we can interact with various learners' opinions and answers. But hopefully, if you are watching this with a friend or your siblings or your parents are close by, you can discuss some of these questions. So when I ask, what do you associate with weddings? It means when I say the word weddings, what pops up into your head, right? So perhaps you want to pause in between these questions and just think about some of these probing questions. Question number 2, the term war. What is your understanding about the term war? Right? So, as always, different people have different opinions and different people have different experiences, right? So, perhaps war in South Africa would be different to what war in Palestine would be. Okay, so think about that. The apartheid era, how was that like a war? Right? Think about the government or police brutality during the apartheid era and then link that to what happens in conventional wars. And then lastly, think about the end of democracy, 1994. Many of you are born free, so perhaps you want to ask an older sibling or a cousin or a parent this question. What was the first day of democracy like? Right? Think about that. Look at the pictures below. How do you think South Africans felt during that time? And all of those things. So we're going to continue now with the actual poem. Mazisi Kuneni is our poet, first after the war. I'm going to skip the background information of the poet and I'm going to jump right into the poem. So let us start. We heard songs of a wedding party. We saw a soft light coiling around the young blades of grass. At first we hesitated. Then we saw her footprints. Her face emerged. Then her eyes of freedom. She woke us up with a smile, saying, "What day is it? What day is this that comes so suddenly?" We said, "It is the first day after the war." Then, without waiting, we ran to the open space, ululating to the mountains and the pathways, calling people from all circles of the earth. We shook up the old man, demanding a festival. We asked for all the first fruits of the season. We held hands with a stranger. We shouted across the waterfalls. People came from all lands. It was the first day of peace. we saw our ancestors traveling tall on the horizon. So we're going to go through our summary of the poem. So just like I've read now, the poem describes the first day after the end of apartheid. If I just go back quickly, the poem is called the first day after the war. And when we refer to the war in this context, we are referring to the end of apartheid. So the speaker describes the joy and jubilation, celebration, happiness, all of those things, as all South Africans. Let me just fix that mistake quickly. Sorry about that, guys. As all South Africans came together. Oh, what's going on here with all the mistakes? Okay. As all South Africans came together to celebrate freedom and democracy. The poem ends with a powerful reminder. So I'm just going to go back quickly and read it again. We saw all our ancestors traveling tall on the horizon. So the poem ends with a powerful reminder that we must not forget about those who fought in the struggle for our freedom. So, like myself and those watching, those of you who are matric, we are all born frees, born in 1994 and above. And so we don't necessarily know what it's like to live in apartheid or to live in the wartime, right? So we must think about those who fought in the struggle for our freedom, right? We wouldn't be sitting here today living unrestricted lives, right, if it wasn't for those freedom fighters, okay, and our forefathers and ancestors and all of those who were in the battle for freedom in South Africa. Nonetheless, we go back to the summary. Although they are not physically present, so many of those people were no longer with us, they are looking over us, and we must be aware of their presence, right? We must feel them around us because the sacrifices that they have made are not in vain. Why? Because look at us now, right? Our newfound freedom in South Africa and our dignity has been restored, right? So we must always be thankful and grateful for all of those freedom fighters. Okay, we heard songs of a wedding party. So, when we think of a wedding, we think of a celebration. But not only is a wedding a celebration, it's the joining of two families, right? Or two parties. Think of a wedding, right? If you walk down the aisle, usually on the left hand side or the right hand side, it's the male side of the family, and the opposite side, it's the female side of the family. Or maybe it's a same sex marriage, let me not be biased, right? Or, and so the two parties that are joining together, it's not just a, a couple coming together, it's their families coming together. So look at the picture on top, right? Um, we've got different races now coming together. If you look at the old South African flag and the new South African flag, right? So it's the joining of two parties, right? So in the poem, what is actually being joined together? So I kind of gave it away, right, in my answer. But in this context, the wedding is used as a metaphor to describe the whole celebration of the end of apartheid. Okay? And just as a married couple are now united at the beginning of a new life together, South Africans at this time, in this context of the poem, at the end of apartheid, right? They were all once divided, and now they are beginning a new time in their lives, a new time in their journeys, and this time is of peace and harmony. Right, the war is over. Right, the poem is called "The First Day After the War." Excuse me, guys. In the previous video as well, I've got a bit of gas, but nonetheless. Okay, we saw a soft light coiling around the young blades of grass. So, when they refer to light, we saw the light. What is the light? Right? So the light, whenever you think of darkness, right? You're in a dark space, you're unhappy, you may be depressed, right? It's maybe you live a restricted life, but now you remember, think of there's light at the end of the tunnel. So what does that mean, right? You see light for the first time. In this context, light means or refers to the first glimmers of hope which slowly emerges from the darkness. In other words, in this context, light is referring to hope, we know, but in this context, it's the hope that shines upon the new South Africa. It's 1994, apartheid has ended, and it's a new South Africa for everybody. Okay? The light is described as soft because it is still new, delicate, and fragile. Okay, it's a soft light. Why? It's a new light, it's a delicate light, it's fragile. In other words, this is a new feeling, this new hope that South Africans are feeling. It's something that they've never experienced before. Okay, and the light is referred to as coiling. Coiling is a moving, it's a twisting movement, right? Something that twists around another thing. So the light, the hope, right, the delicate hope, this newfound hope for South Africans, are slowly twisting around the young blades of grass. Okay, so what is going on here? Why is the light twisting around young blades of grass? So let's just recap. Soft refers to something delicate. It's a new light, it's a new hope. This hope that South Africans are experiencing after the first year of apartheid, right, or the end of apartheid, sorry, is coiling around the young blades of grass. So this new hope is twisting, it's being experienced by the young blades of grass. So what is the young blades of grass? Right? Just gonna skip quickly. So the young blades of grass refers to the people of South Africa. Okay? The new youth. Right? Sorry, I'm just skipping a bit. This refers to South Africans who were too young and not have not been affected by the horrors of apartheid, the born freeze, right? The youth of South Africa at the time. So they are saying that the speaker is saying that there's a newfound hope for them in this new South Africa. And this image is effective because young grass grows with nourishment. Just as these young youth in South Africa are going to grow up in a new South Africa, they are going to be given new opportunities, right? They are going to be given nourishment, okay? They can blossom freely, right? And they can live in a post apartheid and a democratic South Africa. Um, just to go back to coiling, right? Um, so the people, like I said, the people of South Africa are clinging to the new possibilities, and this description suggests that the vision of the future is still new and will flourish and peace will prevail. Sorry, I jumped a bit back and forth there, but you should understand now what we saw a soft light coiling around the young blades of grass means. Okay, next line. At first, we hesitated. So why are South Africans hesitating? Remember, first day after the war, it's the first day of peace, it's the first day of a new democracy in South Africa, right? Why are they hesitating? And then it describes, the speaker says that we saw her footprints. What is the footprints? Who is the her? Then a face to emerge, and then eyes of freedom. Okay, so to answer my first question, why were South Africans hesitating on the first day after the war? At first, people were unsure how they would respond. Remember, this is a newfound freedom. So South Africans at the time, they were unsure of. Imagine spending your whole life in during the apartheid era. Now, for the first time, you have freedom. So obviously, if you are accustomed or used to a certain way of life, where your lives are dictated by the laws governed by the from apartheid. So you are kind of used to, or you stuck like in this. I wouldn't want to say a bubble, but this context, you are stuck in this little bubble, and that now that bubble is popped, has popped. So now for the first time, you're experiencing a new South Africa. Okay, so obviously they're gonna be hesitant. They might not want to mix, or they might not want to. It's a gradual process, right? So, as the experience of having freedom was new to them and they were therefore unsure of what to do, the people were waiting in anticipation of that memorable day, of the first day of democracy, right? They were waiting, 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 and now it finally happened, right? They did not have proof of the freedom that it could be possible. So, for such a long time, they've been living in apartheid. Now they finally have proof. What is that proof, that tangible proof? It's the footprints, right? Freedom was finally there, right? And the footprints reveals the arrival of freedom, right? The arrival of hope, the arrival of optimism, which is positivity to all the people, right? But now they're calling freedom her. Who is the her? The poet uses personification. What is personification? Given a human characteristic to a non living or a non human object or thing, right? To describe, so freedom is being described as a woman. How do we know it's a woman? Due to the pronoun her. So, why did the author or the poet describe freedom as a woman? Women give birth to a new life. Your mother gave birth to you. Women give birth to something, to a new life. So this is also a new life for South Africans, right? Freedom is something new for them. And the tone, meaning what emotion, what is the sound, what is the feeling we get from these lines, is that South Africans, it's they are in this, they were at first hesitant, but now they could never imagine that oppression has come to an end, right? So they were hesitating. And then what do you think the tone will be later on in the poem? Okay, look at the picture. She woke us up. So still freedom is being personified. She is waking the people up with a smile. And she said, "What day is this that comes so suddenly?" And then South Africans replied, "It is the first day after the war." Okay, what does our analysis say? Yeah, freedom, a woman, has made South Africans realize, she has woken them up by asking what is happening in the country. In other words, South Africans receive a wake up call that apartheid has ended. Here we get direct speech, reassuring that freedom is a reality. So freedom is speaking now. Remember, it was first we saw the footprint, and then we saw the face, and then we saw the eyes. Now we're getting direct speech from freedom. Freedom is talking now to us, right? And how do South Africans respond? They respond by saying that there is unity amongst all South Africans now. Remember, apartheid confined people, right? Um, People of color were restricted with various things on what they had to do. We're not going to go over that, right? We all know what people of color couldn't and could not do. So now those restrictions have come to an end, right? And people are saying, wow, it's the first day after apartheid. All right. Then, without waiting, we ran to an open space, ululating to the mountains and the pathways, calling people from all circles of the earth. Right? I just want to find my phone quickly because I don't know if it's on this PowerPoint, but I want to play you what the sound of ululating is. But okay, but let me get there. So, apartheid has had many restrictions and laws. However, here is an image of an open space, right? So think about the restrictions that South Africans had to endure. Now they don't have those restrictions, right? They've got what is called an open space. Okay? So there's a question here. Does this not provide you with a contrast? Contrast means an opposite of what restrictive apartheid laws once existed. So think about people couldn't do certain things. They couldn't walk about freely and go to certain beaches or marry who they wanted to, and all those other different types of restrictions. But now, they here in this poem, they say people are running to an open space. So remember at the beginning of the poem, or at the start of the poem, or the few lines before this, South Africans were hesitant. Now they're no longer hesitant. Now they are running. Okay? And now they can move freely and they can do what they want to. Okay? Ululating is a howl or a wailing sound that expresses a strong joy. Okay? So I'm just YouTubing a video quickly. Hopefully I can find it. Hopefully it's going to play loud enough to what ululating is. This is the video on YouTube. Cool. Let me just see. Yeah, I've got a better video. I'm going to give you the demonstrate how to ululate. So picture that sound, okay? Ululating is a howl or wailing sound that expresses joy. This is an example of onomatopoeia, right? As the word conveys the sound, okay, of people's spontaneity and expression of celebration and elation. Mm? You read the word ululate, you can automatically hear that sound, okay? Onomatopoeia. So, because all South Africans are celebrating the new democracy, even those in rural spaces, South Africans now want to celebrate their freedom with the world at large. So let's read the lines. Then, without waiting, we ran to the open space, ululating to the mountains. Right, so they are expressing their joy over the mountains, which goes over pathways, calling people from all circles of the earth. Right, so they are expressed. It was a contained um, excitement and joy, but now the joy is being expressed to everybody. It's going out into open spaces, over the mountains, over the pathways, and the joy is calling all people to come celebrate with South Africa. We held hands with a stranger. We shouted across the waterfalls. People came from all lands. So the picture basically gives away what is happening in those lands. Due to previous restrictions caused by the apartheid laws, people could not mix and interact with others from different races. Right? The use of the term stranger reveals that South Africans, who were once considered strangers to each other, remember different races didn't necessarily mix with each other, right? Are now reaching out their hands, they're holding hands, right? They're forming friendships and they are becoming united. We shook up the old man, demanding a festival. We asked for all fruits of the first season. Okay, the speaker uses many strong verbs in these lines. Why? Yeah, this is calling, shook, demanding, shouted. These are forceful verbs, forceful actions, right? And it creates the impression that people are enthusiastic, they are excited, right? And they are determined to enjoy this occasion. They are unable to contain their joy, which is expressed in wild actions such as calling, shook, demanding, and shouted. Fruits of the season refers to again growth and rebirth for the new South Africa. So they ask for fruits of the season. So fruits of a new season, right? Growth, rebirth, fruits, something fruitful, right? Of the new, so they want to enjoy all the new opportunities that they couldn't have in the past. It was the first day of peace. So remember, the poem states it was the first day after the war. The first day after the war is also known as the first day of peace. Right? There is a shift between. So, like I said, there's a shift um, towards the end of the poem. At first, we, the readers, are introduced to apartheid, that was known as a war, and that the war has ended. However, there's a contrast now in this line. There's an opposite now in this line, because it's no longer called the first day after the war. It's now the first day of peace. It's the first day of freedom. It's the first day of hope for a better future for all. And then we saw our ancestors traveling tall on the horizon. The reference to ancestors emphasizes that even the spirit world joins in on the celebration. Okay? Joins in on the end of apartheid. The ancestors are traveling tall, they are standing tall because they are proud, because all South Africans now can experience this newfound freedom at the end of apartheid. The ancestors also to refer to those, in this context, ancestor refers to our freedom fighters, right? They are no longer with us and alive, so they can't really, but they are also celebrating freedom. So, in other words, we must be aware of their presence, right? The sacrifices, like I explained in the beginning, the sacrifices that the ancestors made are not in vain because dignity has been restored to all South Africans. There's a use of alliteration in traveling tall, the t, traveling tall. It's a strong T sound and it emphasizes the strength and pride that the ancestors are feeling. So remember, why did the poet say traveling tall? He could have easily said the ancestors are standing high on the horizon. But the T and the T sound, the repetition of the hard T sound, is to reinforce, is to emphasize how strong and proud the ancestors are. Right? There's always a reason for why poets use certain words in the poem. And then theme, central idea, central message. Another word for theme is the intention. What is the central idea? What was the purpose of this poem? Right? So the intention of the poet writing this poem would be to highlight the hope, that there's always hope after struggle. Right? People have suffered, people have struggled, but now there's hope for them. No pain and suffering last forever, and time will bring a new beginning and a newfound joy and peace. There's always triumph over oppression. Wars never last. Peace is always the answer. Okay, and think about how this can be applied in your own life. So when we are reading poetry and when we are studying poetry in classes, it's not just to test you in the exam. You also need to apply this into your own life. So ask yourself, what what can I learn from the central idea of hope and peace from this poem? Okay, guys, so thanks for tuning in. I will see you over in part two of this lesson, which we will cover the past exam questions and how to answer. Now that you know the content of this poem, how do you apply that content into your answers in your exam for paper two? Right? So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like this video. Leave a comment below. Perhaps you can, if you want to say something to me like, oh, thanks, sir, I understand um, this line better, or I didn't think of the poem in this way. Please do so, and don't forget to share with all your friends so that they can also understand the poem a little bit better.